Okay, recording is started. And what I want to start with is just telling you a little bit about who's here, and then we'll find who's here in the room with me, and then we'll find out who's out there at the schools. But first of all, I wanted to welcome you all and, really thank you for making the time to come to this session. And hopefully it's going to answer a lot of your questions and give you some background that will be helpful. Right now, we in the room, I have me, Jennifer Dickey, and Judy Gabbard, and Andrea Eschen, and that's the Idaho Lives Project. And Andrea is started August 1st, so she's new, so be nice to her.
Oh yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
And Judy Gabbard, as you are going to hear, has been with this group since its inception. So really, I think we have a really good team, and we're really excited to get started with our 7th cohort of schools that we're training in sources of strength. And just so you know, everybody hopefully has the presentation that was sent out and should have been in your inboxes this morning, but I included everybody's contact information that is a new school in this cohort. And then I included our contact information, how you can get a hold of us. And if you want to set up a phone call, just let us know. And I just don't try to distribute everybody's personal cell phones because we don't have a specific office phone. But we are very available for a call. We talk to our schools all the time. And then important for you to know is the National Sources of Strength organization who did the webinar for us, I think 2 weeks ago now. You can use them as a resource as well. If you have a question about the program that you think we couldn't help you with, feel free to reach out to this team. And they are really great. And all of their information is right here on the slide. Is everyone able to see the presentation? Let me just check that. Are you seeing the point on screens? Or is there anybody who is not? How about that? Okay, so we'll just keep going then. So I wanted to let you know about the Idaho Lives Project. We are a partner with the State Department of Education, and we are funded by a grant through the Suicide Prevention Program with the Division of Public Health within the Department of Health and Welfare. So we are funded because of an appropriation in 2016 by the state legislature that created the program of suicide prevention in the Division of Public Health, who funds different suicide prevention organizations and efforts, such as the Suicide Prevention Hotline, Our Project, and a public health campaign, and their office. The one thing that I think is very important or just interesting to know is that the Idaho Lives Project was actually born because Judy Gabbard and Kim Kane, who's now the head of the suicide prevention program at the state, went after a federal grant. Just, usually an entire Department of Health and Welfare at the state level would go after this, but Judy and Kim partnered with the State Department of Education, and they actually got the grant awarded to them in 2013, and they started training schools in 2014. And since they started the training, we have trained 50 schools, and we're adding 13 this school year. So we'll be up to 63 in 2018. And I just wanted to go back over the Sources of Strength program just because I think it's really critical that you understand the program, which I think probably most of you do because you chose to apply for this grant. But just so you know, it is primarily a wellness program. It is not specifically targeted at suicide prevention. That is one of its main goals and aims, but it is when you implement it with fidelity to the tenets of the program, you will end up reducing all sorts of risky behaviors, bullying, substance abuse, depression. It really can impact the school climate in a very positive way, and the behaviors of your students and your staff even will find value in it. I use it all the time in my own life and with my own family. Well, let me go on from there rather than dwell on that anymore, but that is one of the important things. It is on the National Registry of Evidence-Based Practices and Programs, and you can look that up so that if you want to see the research that was done and what the results were. It's an upstream prevention program, and we are trying to instill resiliency in youth. We are trying, and when we say upstream, we're talking about getting to the students before they get to the point of depression and suicidal ideation or substance abuse. We are trying to teach them about their strengths and about how to behave in a way that will give them positive outcomes in their lives. And also teach them how to nurture the strengths where they might not be as strong in. And that's really the goal of the program. And along with that, one of the really important other tenets of the program is that we want to break down the barriers between adults and students, adults and youth, so that if they have a friend who is in mental or emotional pain, they will get them help. We are not trying to make these kids junior counselors. We are trying to teach them when it is not okay to keep silent. So we use as an example, if you had a friend with a broken leg by the side of the road who said, no, I'll be fine, don't worry about me. They would never just say, sure, you can walk it off, you'll be fine. They're gonna get them help somehow. And it's the same with the mental health and the emotional pain. So those are some of the things we try to normalize. Then the other part, one of the powerful part of the program is when they start pushing these ideas and messages out to the rest of the student body. And that's why when you build your teams, you want to get peer leaders from leaders in all the different groups. You want to get the freaks and the geeks and the stoners and the jocks and the cheerleaders. You want the leaders of every single kind of group, and you want the people on the periphery. One of the things that is really powerful that your students can do once they've started learning about the program and had their training is to actually present to your staff. And then the staff can learn about some of these messages about the messages are always based on hope, help, and strength. And they can learn about their strengths. They can learn that we all have strengths. We need to nurture them. We need to build them up. But it's one of the best ways to learn something is to teach somebody else. And so that's something you might consider having your students do early on after their training. So while the program is peer-based, involved and active adult advisors are a critical part of this equation that will lead to an effective program. And I can't emphasize that enough, just that even though this is a peer-led program and you want to get the peers taking ownership and leading some of these activities, it's really, really critical to have those inspired and inspiring adult advisors leading this program and carrying it on year after year. There's going to be the youngest trainee. And other results you can expect by implementing the program are to increase help-seeking behavior and breaking down the barriers between the youth and the adults. So you can really see a lot of good things from this program, and it's really just it's a unique program in that it pushes that message out to all of the schools, to all of the students and the teachers, and that's how you're changing your school climate. It's not just about being at that point of intervention when you really, when a student is in crisis, you are pushing out this message, and you can change the school climate for everyone. This is not just a club of kids that is separate. It is a club of kids bringing belongingness to the entire student body. And let me just break in here and see if Judy has anything else to add, because she's the true expert.
Oh yeah, sure. I really don't at this point. You want to take questions?
Yeah, does anybody have a question yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so thanks for listening to that little story, that little spiel. So this is the meat of it. This is what you guys are doing now, is establishing your sources of strength teams, and you are hopefully have your adult advisors selected. But if you don't, these are some guidelines, what you are looking for in your adult advisors. You want them to have high connectivity with the students. They have a good rapport with the students, but they also need to have a positive attitude just in their basic life. They need to not be a negative Nelly, a Debbie Downer. It's just that you want people who are going to believe in the mission of the program, who understand the program and buy into that. Yeah, let me have Judy jump in.
And the other thing is even though we are, we know who those highly connected people are that kids love, and it's great if they have time, but sometimes people will, say yes to whatever you ask, but we've got to make sure they have time to meet with those kids, because it's really critical that you can keep those meetings going, especially the first few months. Kids will get so they understand what to do a lot on their own, but we've got to have those adults be available to them. So if you got somebody who's really great but is just already doing everything, you might want to pick somebody else. Oh, you already said that.
Oh no, I didn't already say that. I'm just pointing. So that's our second bullet point. Yeah. You don't want to pick people who are just already at the point of collapse.
Good.
No, that's good. Judy has so much good advice and wisdom about this program. And there's the adult advisor skill set document that was distributed that gives you some really good characteristics to look for. And then as you're putting this team together, you want to, what we generally recommend is that you have one adult advisor for every 10 students. But if you have a high-risk population, the national organization recommends one adult advisor to every 7 students. No matter what, even if you have a really small student body, you still want to have at least 2 adult advisors. You want preferably 3. We originally started with 4 to 8 as our recommendation, but there are some schools where 4 staff members would be pretty much the whole school. So try to have 3. And just the bare minimum would be 2. And then on the other end, you have some schools where there's a lot of enthusiasm for it, and you might have 15 people who want to be on your adult advisor team. The only thing there is that you can get really diluted, and sort of that everybody feels like, oh, well, there are so many people on this team, I'm sure somebody will take care of that. So you want to make sure that you have a dedicated core. You want to have at least 2 people who are going to work on this actively, and then maybe the other people are support, in more of a support function. But we do try to encourage you to cap your adult advisor team at 8. We did train a large school in Boise last spring, and they had 15 adult advisors. And we aren't going to say no, you can't. But that's our rule of thumb recommendation. Does anybody have questions about putting together their adult advisor team? Okay.
Are you going to,
Oh, go ahead.
in the presentation, are you going to share more of the responsibilities and expectations of the adult advisors?
Are we going to talk about the responsibilities of the adult advisor?
Yeah.
That actually happens during the training. That's a 4-hour training where that is gone into. But generally, adult advice. So you are going to want to how you'll see the training go is that your students will break off into groups where they want to do a social media campaign, or they want to do a posters, or they're into art, or they're going to be a bunch of different activity groups, and you could have an adult advisor lead one adult advisor lead each one of those. I think 6 groups we try to break those campaigns into. And so the basic way that the program is recommended to be run is, in your first 3 months, try to meet twice a month. And then after that, just to keep that momentum going, to get things actively, some kind of campaigns developed and going. And then after that, you can meet once a month. And so you want those adult advisors to plan on that they'll be meeting at least once a month ongoing. You want this program to go year after year. So, but just those first 3 months, we recommend that you meet twice a month. And, it looks different at every school. Some schools do hold those meetings during advisory period. Some schools put together, they're just all over the map what they are doing to get those students together during, for an hour or so. Some schools, though, do break it up where they do every week. They have a 20-minute advisory time that they have all those students meet. And Judy might have some other thoughts on that.
And I think and Jennifer's absolutely right. How those meetings work for your adult advisors and your school. We have some schools where the adult advisors break up and they take the kids during their prep every other week or so. And so they run it through the day so the kids only ever miss one class. A lot of our schools do use their advisory time, and we ask that if you use off school time, that you don't do that very frequently, because we want kids to see that this is really important to the school. But we'll talk about it when we meet with your adult advisors. We let them figure out how this is going to look in your school, what works, kind of extra time you have. We have one school who has an afternoon once a month, and they're going to have that they take off and the kids do activities. They're going to have their sources kids meet during that time. So whatever your school has going, we just kind of like you to slip it in to your framework and figure out what works for you. And we'll talk about it during your adult advisor.
Yeah, and there's a field guide. We bring a printed field guide for every adult advisor that gives them ideas about how to run their meetings, gives them a framework. You want the kids to be developing these campaigns, these messaging campaigns that they're going to put on for the rest of the school. And there are also step-by-step guides on the Sources of Strength website that we will show you when we come for the adult advisor meeting, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and you can get some quick wins and you don't feel like, oh geez, what the heck are we gonna do? You know, sometimes just getting started and getting rolling is the most important thing. The field guide also gives you games and ideas for how, you know, just ideas for how to run your meetings. And one important thing about the meetings is that it should be 1/3 fun, and then working on the campaigns and activities. But you always want to have games and make it fun for the kids to be there.
And sharing.
And sharing, that's the other
sharing can be
third,
really
yeah.
easy, because you can just say, okay, who used a source of strength this week, and we'll talk about that a bit too, because that's sharing. When they say, okay, I made a new friend that's much more positive, or I really relied on my family strength this week, so that you can get a couple of quick stories, and it doesn't have to be huge, but each time, so you're building those strengths in their head.
Yeah, and you build a team feeling, you know, that you know a little bit about each other, and there's you know, a closeness. And one of the things about the sharing is that you don't want it to be sad, shock, or trauma. If somebody has a sad story to tell, then that's okay, but you need to keep that to about 10% of the tell, and then 90% of positive. Turn it around to, okay, how did you get through that? Or if you're still struggling with that, let's talk to somebody else and see how they got through a similar situation. So what strength did you rely on, or what coping, you know, how did you figure out a way to get through a situation like that? But that's all of that will be part of that adult advisor training. Essentially, the responsibilities are to go to these meetings and help run them, and help the students get their campaign activities together and pushed out to the school or to your communities. You can go and present to your local Lions Club or Chamber of Commerce, you know, all kinds of things
School
that the
board.
kids can do. The school board, excellent choice. So did anybody else have any questions on the adult advisors?
I have another question, please. Prior to any of this faculty training, the peer advisor, or the adult advisor training, can you provide an agenda, like in the next, like now, like can you give us an idea of what's covered during those different trainings?
Can we provide what?
An agenda, or just a little bit like you have the agenda for today, an agenda for those trainings.
What's the agenda for the adult advisor training?
Like an outline?
Yeah.
Sure, I know what you do. We can, if you think it's important. Do you want something written? Do you want slides? What would you like?
Just a outline would be fine.
Okay. Okay. And which school are you?
Bishop Kelly High School.
Oh, outline. Okay. Well, yeah, we can whip you up an agenda. Some schools have done what's called minis, and those people will have a different training because they only have a 2-hour. If you did a mini with your gatekeeper for your adults, we've done a lot of the sources, so we're going to just do the setup if you've already had a 2-hour mini. But for Bishop Kelly, you haven't, so we're going to do, and I don't remember if we put you on for one. Can't remember. Chris, did you ask for a mini in your gatekeeper?
Yeah.
What's the alternative?
Well, the gatekeeper is a 2-hour suicide intervention training. And sometimes schools want their whole staff trained, and it's called a mini, and that's 2 hours also. So there's 4 hours with the adults. An adult advisor is 4 hours by itself, but if we do the mini with all of your staff, then we only have 2 hours with the adult advisor.
And the many sources presentation that or training that Judy's talking about is it just gives the basic concepts of sources of strength to the adults so that they understand the program as well, and that they can learn some of the things that the students will be learning.
And they're more supportive of when kids come in and want to do a 10-minute presentation, that kind of thing.
All right.
Okay, got you down for that. We'll get that to you.
Okay, so does anybody have any other questions on that adult advisor training, adult advisor selection? Okay, and once you get your adult advisor team set up, you're ready to select your peer leaders. Now, the peer leaders, you should be nominated by all of your staff. So people, even, you know, anybody who interacts with your students could have a good idea of who they see as leaders of these different groups. And they might know more about the groups than the administrative staff. So you want to give those forms to all of your staff. And those, hopefully everybody has those. I did not include all of those again on yesterday's email, but I will resend all of those forms out just to make sure that you have them. And then, so everybody gets to nominate peer leaders. The form gives guidance on what to look for and how to do that to your staff, so you don't have to explain it all to them. And then once you collect them, you'll want to get a smaller team than the entire staff to make that final selection. And after you've made your final selection, there are peer leader invitations that explain to the students that they've been selected, that this is you know, an honor. They are seen as a leader and somebody who has influence. And will explain a bit about the program, and those, you know, I'll resend those out as well. And those are available, those and the parent / guardian permission form are available in Spanish and English, of course. But I will send those out in this week, so you can get that started. They were sent earlier. If you're ready to roll, just look for an email from me and you'll find those somewhere. I've sent them a couple of times. And then so there are just some more guidelines here about selecting your students so that you're getting representation from all the different social and racial ethnic groups on campus. So just want to keep that in mind, that you also want to get people who are friends with your at-risk students. Maybe you don't want the at-risk students in the group at this point. Try to bring them in maybe later, but you do want people who are connected with the population that has behavior problems or behavior issues. And then, so for the number of students that you want to pull onto this team, you are looking for 10% of your student body as the basic guideline. Some schools are very large, and since we cap the training at, you know, so we try to keep it at 60. We've done up to 70, but that just gets to be a very difficult group to give an effective training. That's why we recommend that you have no more than 60. But for the small schools, we would prefer to have 25. 20 is really the minimum to have an effective training. For those large schools where, you know, maybe you're only going to have 60 students only represents 5% of your population, 6%, you can pull in additional students later that year even, or when we come and do the booster training the following year, add a pile of them. Then, you know, you can add you can build that group beyond 60. It's that first training that is difficult to do with more than 60-ish students. Anybody have questions about selecting peer leaders? Okay. Now, so the trainings. So every school is required by the contract with the Department of Health and Welfare to give all of your staff a gatekeeper training. That's the basic suicide prevention intervention training so that they can learn warning signs and some of the theory behind suicide. So that is a 2 to 2.5 hour training. We try to do 2.5 hours. There are usually a lot of questions. We can do a little bit of a role play if we get extra time, but 2.5 hours is great. And then this is the thing Judy was talking about, that we can add a mini sources training for all of your staff. If you have a professional development day where you can allot 4 hours to that training, and it you know, the staff tends to really enjoy that. So that's what the first one's about. Then we have a 4-hour adult advisor training. That is for your staff. And another thing that I didn't mention, but it's on the slide, if you have community members that have high connectivity with the students in the school, and they have time to come to these meetings once a month, by all means, invite them to be an adult advisor. That can be an excellent choice. So, but they would need to be a part of that 4-hour training. And so we do that usually on the first day, or we usually do that before the peer leader training, which includes the adult advisors. So and that's a 5-hour training where all of your selected peer leaders and all of the adult advisors will attend. And one thing to be aware of and to make your adult advisors aware of is that they really need to participate in that training, and you know, make sure that it's a day that they have free. Occasionally we have someone who needs to leave early, but and that's understandable, or that, you know, needs to be gone for a little while of it, but we really encourage them to be fully participating and not coming in and out. We've done a couple of trainings at schools where we had low attentiveness or low participation, and those schools did not fly. They just didn't flourish. So it really is important that these adult advisors are really on board and happy to be there and engaged and have time for it. So, and that's going to be usually the second day, although sometimes some of our trainings, there's a bit of a gap there. It might be a couple weeks apart. And then the next fall, we'll come back and do a 5-hour booster training, which we will provide the license and a new kit. The Sources of Strength has a $500 license renewal fee every year, annual. Yes, hold on.
$85 or $8,500.
$8,500, not $8,500.
We both.
Yeah. A 500 license renewal fee, and so we will provide that next year and come back and do another 5-hour booster training for the peer leaders, any new peer leaders, and you might even have some staff turnover. bring in the new adult advisors, and we essentially it's essentially what your peer leader and adult advisor joint training is on during this first year is what the booster looks like with slight modifications. So that's what to expect with the trainings. Does anybody have any questions or concerns on that?
Me again, I have a question.
Yeah.
Does your training, as you describe above, have to happen in the fall, or do you have some instances where it's happened in the spring?
The booster training?
Nope, the above training, the gatekeeper, advisor training, the peer leader trainings.
The gatekeeper training we can provide some. For example, last year's cohort 6, some of those schools are just now doing their gatekeeper training. The adult advisor and peer leader trainings, we have done those in the spring. Here's one of our lessons learned from doing this for 4 years now, is that the schools that are trained in the fall tend to set a better foundation and have more time to get some momentum, get everybody going before school lets out for the summer. So it is preferable, but we can make it work.
Yeah, one of the things that we figured out is you're going to lose several of those, and up to even a third of your kids if we do them in the spring. You lose, first of all, if you've got some seniors, and we always want seniors if you're a high school. And the other thing is kids move, and so what we figured out is and staff moves, and so we end up not being able to be as strong. It still works out, but just not as good. And kids don't get enough time lots of times if there's 3 months to really get a couple of activities under their belt, and they like to get going. After they're trained, they're going to want to go. So that's what we've seen. They don't have as much time, and they lose both adults and students, peer leaders who were trained. And so then we have to come back and do more, obviously, and we kind of feel bad for those kids who didn't get as involved as they wanted to because they moved or graduated.
So we recommend that it be done in the fall, but we can work with you, and we can do it in the spring. We certainly have before. This is just what we have learned as we've done 50 schools, that the ones that were trained in the fall had a better outcome usually. So just let us know if it's really going to be difficult for you to schedule it in the fall, and we will work with you on a spring schedule.
And we can go clear into December also. We're not missed to that. So if you like late November, early December, we can do that too.
Any other questions on those trainings? And then just to let everybody know, what is established by National Sources of Strength is that during that adult advisor and peer leader training, the 5-hour training, you should have lunch delivered for the entire team so that they can eat together, builds camaraderie, makes them feel more like they are a team together. The adults eat with the students in the same room, and should just be something easy and quick, delivered to the school. Pizza, sandwiches. It doesn't need to be fancy at all, and you can use the stipend that Sources of Strength or your sponsoring organization is providing to you. So hopefully that will help with the substitutes and the lunch.
What kind of facility is best for this peer leader training? Is this a big conference room? Is this a gymnasium? Are they running?
That's another critical piece that I was just getting to. You do not want a gymnasium because the acoustics tend to be really difficult. And there's going to be a lot of discussion, and some of the kids are quiet. So what we have found is that choir or band rooms are really great, and cafeterias usually don't work well. You need to have a space where you have enough room for everyone to sit in a chair in a circle with no desks or tables in the way, and because this is a very active training, and they're going to be using the middle of that circle of chairs for games and all kinds of activities, writing, getting down on the floor, writing things. We at libraries can sometimes work. We've been in several libraries. Sometimes a local church. We've gone to fire stations, but you want it to be a room where the acoustics work, and it needs to be large enough for everybody to be in a circle together in chairs. And this is all in the implementation at a glance. If anybody wants to refer to that, to the specifics, it's on the last page there. So anybody have any other questions about logistics? Okay, then I'm gonna hop to our next slide. If I can get this thing to go. So how the stipends work. The State Department of Education has submitted a request to their finance department to transfer $1,200 to each school for the first half of your stipend, or your sponsoring organization will be sending that check to you. And this money can be used, as I was saying, for your substitutes or and the lunch. The only stipulation we really put on that money is that you should retain at least 500 of it for the students to do their activities. And keep in mind, you're getting another $1,200 at the end of the year after you submit your forms and surveys. So you get a total of $2,400, $1,200 now. They will be, because that is transferring straight into district coffers, we have asked the State Department of Education to mark it with, or tag it with the school name, and it's for sources of strength. And that should be coming, the request has gone into the State Department of Education at the end of last week. So I expect that money should be transferring this week into your, I'm not sure how long that process takes, but that's, no one on the state sponsored schools is being trained before October, so you should certainly have it before then. Does anyone have any questions about the stipend funds?
We have a question.
Yeah.
Is that public and private schools for the department stipend?
Actually, I couldn't hear that at all. I'm sorry.
Is that stipend for public and private schools?
Is that something coming when?
Is that stipend for a public and or a private school? I can check. How would I do that?
Yeah, maybe we'll look for that in the chat. Let's see, where the heck's my chat box? Oh, we have several chats.
Oh, good.
So, Chris, you are sponsored by SPAN Idaho, and so if a school is not sponsored by the State Department of Education, you are being sponsored. We have 3 schools being sponsored by Region 4 SPAN Idaho chapter. So anyway, that check will come directly from SPAN Region 4, and just, it will come closer to the time of your training. Okay, now the fun part. So we have to collect data because we are funded by the state, and it can be a little bit cumbersome. I understand that, but really the point is that we are trying to figure out if this program is effective, and if it is shown to be effective, the more likely it is that funding will be continued or increased. And so part of reporting to the Department of Health and Welfare, our sponsoring entity, we have to report back different outcomes and measurements. So we have, at the beginning of the year, you will be given a peer leader survey and an adult advisor survey. And these take 5 to 10 minutes to complete. We have them online in SurveyMonkey. And they are not reported back to the state with any personally identifying information. They are reported in the aggregate. So it's very private. It's under a, it's a secure encrypted data entry line that you will be using. So it's something we feel is you will be anonymous. The only reason we are asking for names on these forms, as you will see, is so that our evaluator can match up the before and the after, and identify every single form before I send that data in. So your name is taken off and it's coded. So not even our BSU evaluator will have your name or your students' names. And so those are the first two things that we have you fill out. And those must be completed before we do the training, because once we've done the training, we aren't going to be measuring the same state of somebody's opinion of the school climate, of all the questions. It's not going to be the same if we do them after the training. So it's critical we get those done before the training. And I will be sending those forms or links to those forms out tomorrow. If you need paper copies, we can do that. So we can get you the paper forms. It's more secure and more efficient to use the online version. But if you need that, not a problem, just let me know. So those are the two forms before the training starts. And then at the end of towards the end of the second semester, so probably March, I will, or even February, I will send those first two surveys that you're going to fill out in SurveyMonkey, those are the pre-surveys. Then we send out post-surveys for the exact same population, the peer leaders and the adult advisors. And so we'll need those repeated. And there are 3 other forms that we have you fill out. One is for the counselor or their designee, maybe a social worker, that just gives us a little bit of information on suicide ideation referrals that have been made during the school year. And then there is a team status report. It's just a 1-pager as well. Just want to know what your activities are, and a little bit about your sources of strength team. Then there is an online form that is provided by Sources of Strength that will ask you different questions. It's sort of a self-assessment, a team assessment form. You just fill it out honestly and how you think your team is doing, how many of a certain kind of activity you've done. It's pretty simple as well. It's probably 5 minutes to fill out. And in there, you just indicate whether you want to call back. And, whenever we see anybody wants to call back, we schedule a call with them. But you don't have to wait to fill that form out to request a meeting or a call with us, just so you know. But so those are the 5 forms and surveys that we must collect from every school. And once you submit that, then we will give the State Department of Ed or the sponsoring agency or entity will send the second $1,200 stipend check. And very, very important, every public school anyway has access to safe and drug-free schools. Now, not every, some schools I know use them for SROs, but not, some schools also have that money available. And the State Department of Education has completely backs up using those funds for any of your sources of strength activities. Even renewing your license in your 3rd year. So you could go after those funds to use for your activities later as time goes on. Oh, and then, yes, Judy reminded me that, so ever since we started putting all of our surveys into SurveyMonkey, we've been able to provide back to the schools a report that shows you where you might have opportunities for, maybe doing some education or looking at, well, I wonder why people are reporting this. There was one school where I think almost no one knew what the suicide prevention policies were. So maybe at the beginning of the year, you just talk about that in a team meeting. So and then it'll show you where your strengths are, or it's very useful to give you an overview or at a glance look at your school climate. And so I provide that to every reporting school at the end of the year in a graphical format with all of the percentages included. And our schools have, this year or last spring was the first time we had provided that, because we just started using SurveyMonkey last year, and they really liked it. So anybody have any questions about any of the data collection or forms and surveys?
I just want to say it sounds daunting, but it's pretty fast, really. Counselors generally keep ideation information anyway. That SurveyMonkey, sometimes you can take your whole peer leader group right 10 or 15 minutes into the lab and get it done on just before we do the training, if that helps you. But we've had lots of schools just take 10 minutes of a peer leader meeting and meeting on their peer leaders and just go in and do that. And the same for staff. Usually staff can just be given that link and say, hey, we need this in the next 3 days. It doesn't take staff very long. It's one pager for them. So thanks for doing that for us. It really does help.
Hey, so
and everyone was sent a detailed school reporting requirements document that describes these in more at more length. We've only got 4 minutes, so I don't want to go on too long. Go ahead. I'm sorry, did I cut somebody off? Oh, here's a question. Are the school staff pre-training surveys and post-training surveys for all staff or adult advisors only? Thank you. That's a very good question. They are for all staff, because we are trying to assess the general school climate. So we set a baseline with these pre-surveys, and you don't fill out another pre-survey again. Every year you will be requested to complete these forms, but only at the end of the year. So we use that as the baseline, the pre-survey that you're going to complete this fall, and then we compare it longitudinally so that we can see do we have improvement in school climate when we have the Sources of Strength program actively going in these schools. I hope that makes sense. And then let me just wrap up here. We've got 2 minutes to the end of the hour, and one thing I want to say about program sustainability, you really want to keep this program going, just from the standpoint that it's an overall program. When you're going after school climate, it's not a silver bullet. It's not just an intervention program. You're going upstream, and you need to keep going with it to make long-term changes in your school climate, in the students' behaviors. So just keep at it. Don't feel discouraged if things don't magically turn around in some of your students or in some of the attitudes in that very first, right after the training. It's definitely not a silver bullet. It's a long-term process.
And call us if you have any trouble, and or get online to the Sources of Strength. We're here for you, and we want you to be here for each other. So
absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, Andrea is helping us to set up a first-year school mentoring program where we are trying to mentor trying to match our new schools with an established school as a mentor, because we had a pre-conference last year in Sun Valley. The State Department of Ed always has their prevention and support conference annually, and we had a pre-conference. We had 28 different schools show up, and it was just phenomenal, the interaction and the collaboration and the partnerships that came out of that. And so I think it's really powerful. We tend, when we're in the schools and we're doing our own thing and we just think we need to do it all ourselves, you tend to become somewhat of an island, I think. And if you reach out and communicate and work together, I think it'll help get over hurdles, or sort of, that blank piece of paper. Now what do I write? Writer's block. And I think it's inspiring and encouraging it to everyone when you work with somebody who's been down that road before. So we're working on getting that put together. We need to reach out and work with our established schools and get good matches. But that's something that I think will be really powerful and hopefully help everybody keep their program going. But anyway, we are at 3 p.m. and I want to be respectful of your time. Does anyone have any question, or would you like to, feel free to set up another time to meet with us. Thanks, Eric. Okay, if nobody has questions, everybody has our emails at least, and some, feel free to email us and set up a call. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
That's okay. Ooh.